The Age of Enlightenment. A beacon of intellectual progress. The Age of Enlightenment, a transformative intellectual movement that swept across Europe during the 17th and 18th centuries, marked a profound shift in human thought and paved the way for the modern world. Emerging in the aftermath of the Renaissance, the Enlightenment was characterized by an unwavering belief in reason, science, and individual rights. This era, often referred to as the Age of Reason, witnessed a departure from traditional authority and superstition, giving rise to a new era where human intellect took center stage. Key characteristics and principles of the Enlightenment. Reason as the guiding light. Central to the Enlightenment was the elevation of reason as the primary source of authority and knowledge. Thinkers of the time argued that through rational thought, humanity could uncover the laws governing the natural world and society, leading to progress and emancipation from ignorance. Scientific revolution and empiricism. The Enlightenment was deeply influenced by the scientific revolution of the 16th and 17th centuries. Enlightenment thinkers embraced the scientific method and empiricism, advocating for the systematic observation, experimentation, and analysis of the world. This emphasis on empirical evidence laid the foundation for modern scientific inquiry. Individualism and human rights. Enlightenment philosophers championed the inherent rights and dignity of the individual. Ideas about natural rights, such as life, liberty, and property, became prominent. Thinkers like John Locke argued that governments existed to protect these natural rights, and individuals had the right to rebel against oppressive rulers. Secularism and religious tolerance. The Enlightenment advocated for a separation between church and state, promoting religious tolerance and the idea that individuals should be free to practice their faith without interference from the government. This departure from religious dogma contributed to the rise of secularism. Social contract and political philosophy. Influential works like Rousseau's The Social Contract and Montesquieu's The Spirit of the Laws explored the concept of the social contract, emphasizing the idea that legitimate political authority arises from the consent of the governed. These ideas laid the groundwork for democratic principles and the development of constitutional governments. Enlightenment thinkers believed in the power of education to enlighten and uplift society. They championed the dissemination of knowledge to the broader population, aiming to eradicate ignorance and foster a more informed and enlightened citizenry. As we delve into the Age of Enlightenment, we uncover a period marked by intellectual daring, a commitment to reason, and a vision for a world shaped by human understanding. Let's continue this journey through the corridors of history, where the flickering light of reason illuminated the path toward a more enlightened future. Historical context. The roots of the Enlightenment can be traced back to the dynamic and transformative period of the late Renaissance and the early modern era. As Europe emerged from the Middle Ages, several social, political, and cultural factors set the stage for the intellectual upheaval that would define the Enlightenment. Social conditions. Rise of the middle class. The gradual rise of the middle class played a pivotal role in shaping the social landscape. As trade and commerce flourished, a new class of merchants and professionals emerged, challenging traditional hierarchies. This social mobility fostered a desire for education and intellectual exploration beyond the confines of the aristocracy. Print culture and public sphere. The advent of the printing press in the 15th century facilitated the widespread dissemination of knowledge. Books, newspapers, and pamphlets became more accessible, giving rise to a burgeoning public sphere where ideas could be exchanged and debated. Coffeehouses and salons became intellectual hubs, providing spaces for discussions that transcended social barriers. Political conditions. Absolutism and monarchies. The prevailing political landscape in Europe was characterized by absolute monarchies, where rulers held vast powers and authority. However, this concentration of power often led to authoritarian rule and limited political freedoms. Enlightenment thinkers would later challenge these absolutist structures, advocating for more democratic forms of governance. Wars and conflicts. The era leading up to the Enlightenment witnessed significant conflicts, such as the 30 Years' War and the English Civil War. These upheavals prompted reflection on political and social structures, as well as the role of individuals in shaping the destiny of nations. Cultural conditions. The Renaissance and humanism. The Renaissance, with its revival of classical learning and emphasis on humanism, laid the groundwork for Enlightenment ideals. Humanism encouraged a focus on individual potential, critical thinking, and a re-evaluation of traditional authority. Scientific Revolution. The 17th century witnessed the scientific revolution, challenging long-held beliefs about the natural world. Pioneering figures like Galileo Galilei, Johannes Kepler, and Isaac Newton introduced new scientific methodologies, inspiring Enlightenment thinkers to apply reason and observation beyond the realm of science. 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648. The devastation wrought by the 30 Years' War prompted reflection on the nature of political authority and the need for more tolerant and inclusive societies. Glorious Revolution, 1688. The Glorious Revolution in England marked a pivotal moment in constitutional history. The overthrow of James II and the establishment of a constitutional monarchy underscored the idea that rulers' power should be limited and subject to the consent of the governed. Letter Concerning Toleration, 1689. Locke's influential work laid the foundation for religious tolerance and the idea that individuals have natural rights that should be protected by a just government. The Enlightenment did not emerge in isolation, it was a response to the challenges and opportunities presented by the evolving social, political, and cultural landscape of early modern Europe. The quest for knowledge, liberty, and a more just society became the driving force behind a movement that would shape the course of history. Key thinkers of the Enlightenment. Contributions to political philosophy. John Locke, a towering figure of the Enlightenment, made profound contributions to political philosophy, particularly through his work Two Treatises of Government, 1689. Locke rejected the idea of the divine right of kings and argued that political authority should be based on a social contract between rulers and the governed. He asserted that individuals possess natural rights to life, liberty, and property, and governments exist to protect these rights. Locke's ideas laid the groundwork for modern democratic thought and influenced the drafting of constitutions and declarations of rights. Impact on the Enlightenment. Locke's emphasis on the social contract, natural rights, and limited government profoundly influenced Enlightenment thinkers. His ideas resonated with those seeking to challenge absolute monarchies and establish systems that safeguarded individual liberties. Locke's philosophy became a cornerstone for the development of constitutional governance, influencing the American and French revolutions and contributing to the formation of democratic ideals that continue to shape political thought today. Voltaire. Advocacy for freedom of speech. Voltaire, the pen name of François-Marie Arouet, was a staunch advocate for freedom of speech and a fierce critic of censorship and religious intolerance. In works like Candide, Voltaire used satire to critique the injustices and inequalities of society, often targeting religious and political institutions. His famous declaration, "I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it," encapsulates his unwavering commitment to the principle of free expression. Role in shaping Enlightenment thought. Voltaire played a pivotal role in shaping Enlightenment thought by challenging oppressive authority and championing reason. Through his writings, he called for a society based on reason, science, and tolerance. Voltaire's ideas on religious tolerance influenced the development of secularism, paving the way for the separation of church and state. His advocacy for individual liberties and his critique of arbitrary power left an indelible mark on Enlightenment philosophy. Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Ideas on the social contract. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, in his influential work The Social Contract, 1762, proposed a vision of political organization based on a social contract among citizens. Rousseau argued that individuals should voluntarily come together to form a political community, surrendering some of their individual freedoms for the common good. He emphasized the idea of the general will, representing the collective interests of the community. Influence on political theory. Rousseau's ideas laid the groundwork for modern democratic theory, influencing the development of political institutions and governance structures. His concept of the social contract contributed to the discourse on popular sovereignty and the establishment of legitimate political authority through the consent of the governed. Rousseau's vision of democracy, while controversial, left an enduring impact on subsequent political thinkers and movements advocating for participatory government. The contributions of John Locke, Voltaire, and Jean-Jacques Rousseau to the Enlightenment collectively shaped the intellectual landscape of their time and laid the foundations for the modern understanding of individual rights, freedom of speech, and democratic governance. Their ideas continue to resonate in contemporary discussions on politics, governance, and human rights. Enlightenment ideals and values. Reason and rationality. Emphasis on reason. The Enlightenment was characterized by a profound emphasis on reason and rationality as the guiding principles for understanding the world. Enlightenment thinkers believed that through logical thought, observation, and analysis, humans could uncover the laws governing nature, society, and human behavior. Reason was seen as the antidote to ignorance, superstition, and arbitrary authority. Influence on society. The emphasis on reason permeated various aspects of society during the Enlightenment. In governance, it led to the call for rational and just laws, as well as the establishment of constitutional governments based on principles of reason. In education, Enlightenment thinkers advocated for the spread of knowledge and critical thinking, aiming to enlighten the masses and foster an informed citizenry. The promotion of reason also extended to religious and philosophical spheres, challenging traditional dogmas and encouraging a more rational approach to spirituality. Scientific progress. Promotion of scientific inquiry. The Enlightenment championed the principles of empiricism and the scientific method. Inspired by the scientific revolution of the 17th century, Enlightenment thinkers believed in the power of observation, experimentation, and evidence-based reasoning. Scientific inquiry was seen as a means to uncover the natural laws governing the universe and to improve human society through technological and medical advancements. Impact of the scientific revolution. The scientific revolution laid the groundwork for Enlightenment thinking by challenging preconceived notions and fostering a spirit of inquiry. Pioneering scientists like Galileo Galilei, Johannes Kepler, and Isaac Newton revolutionized our understanding of the cosmos. Enlightenment thinkers, building on these scientific achievements, applied the same principles of observation and reason to societal and political issues. The integration of scientific progress into Enlightenment thought contributed to a broader understanding of the interconnectedness of nature, society, and human affairs. Humanism and individualism. Focus on human rights and individual freedoms. Enlightenment ideals embraced humanism and individualism, emphasizing the inherent rights and dignity of each individual. Thinkers like John Locke argued for natural rights to life, liberty, and property, laying the foundation for the belief that government should exist to protect these rights. The Enlightenment vision sought to empower individuals with the autonomy to make decisions about their own lives. Challenge to existing social structures. The emphasis on human rights and individual freedoms challenged existing social structures, particularly absolute monarchies and hierarchical systems. Enlightenment thinkers questioned the legitimacy of authoritarian rule and argued for a more just and egalitarian society. The call for religious tolerance and the separation of church and state also emerged from the humanist ideals of respecting the diverse beliefs and autonomy of individuals. In summary, reason and rationality guided Enlightenment thinking, leading to advancements in governance, education, and philosophy. The commitment to empiricism propelled scientific progress, while humanism and individualism challenged traditional social structures, laying the groundwork for the development of democratic ideals and the recognition of individual rights. These Enlightenment ideals continue to shape our understanding of the world and influence contemporary discussions on governance, ethics, and the pursuit of knowledge. Enlightenment and Politics. Influence on political systems. Impact on political reforms. The Enlightenment had a profound influence on political systems across the globe, inspiring a wave of reforms that sought to replace absolute monarchies with more democratic forms of governance. Enlightenment thinkers, such as John Locke and Montesquieu, argued for the separation of powers, checks and balances, and the protection of individual rights. These ideas became the intellectual underpinnings of political reforms that aimed to limit the power of rulers and establish more accountable and just governments. Development of modern democratic principles. The Enlightenment played a pivotal role in the development of modern democratic principles. The idea that governments derive their legitimacy from the consent of the governed, as advocated by philosophers like Rousseau, became a cornerstone of democratic governance. The notion of popular sovereignty, where political authority resides with the people, guided the establishment of constitutional democracies. The Enlightenment's emphasis on reason, individual rights, and the social contract laid the groundwork for the creation of political systems that sought to protect the freedoms and interests of citizens. Enlightenment and Revolutions. Connection between Enlightenment ideals and revolutionary movements. Enlightenment ideals provided the intellectual fuel for revolutionary movements that sought to overthrow oppressive regimes and establish more just and equitable societies. The core principles of reason, individual rights, and the pursuit of liberty became rallying cries for those advocating for political and social change. The Enlightenment's critique of absolute monarchy and calls for popular sovereignty inspired revolutions that aimed to replace autocratic rule with more participatory forms of government. American and French Revolutions. American Revolution, 1775 to 1783. The American Revolution drew heavily from Enlightenment ideas, with figures like Thomas Jefferson incorporating John Locke's concepts into the Declaration of Independence. The fight for independence against British rule reflected Enlightenment principles of self-determination, individual rights, and the rejection of arbitrary authority. French Revolution, 1789 to 1799. The French Revolution, deeply influenced by Enlightenment thinkers like Voltaire and Rousseau, sought to dismantle the monarchy and establish a republic based on the principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity. The revolutionaries aimed to create a more egalitarian society by challenging traditional social hierarchies. Criticisms and legacy. Critiques of the Enlightenment. Contemporary criticisms. While the Enlightenment championed reason, individual rights, and progress, it faced several contemporary criticisms and challenges. Some of the key critiques include Eurocentrism. Critics argue that Enlightenment ideas were often Eurocentric, reflecting the perspectives of European thinkers and neglecting the diverse cultures and traditions of non-European societies. Exclusionary nature. Enlightenment ideals were sometimes criticized for their exclusionary nature, as they did not always extend to marginalized groups, such as women and certain racial or ethnic communities. Utopianism versus reality. Critics argued that some Enlightenment thinkers held utopian visions that were disconnected from the practical challenges of implementing their ideas in the real world. Authoritarian reaction. Enlightenment ideas faced opposition from conservative forces that resisted challenges to traditional authority and social structures. Opposition to certain ideals. Religious opposition. Enlightenment ideas challenging traditional religious authority faced resistance from religious institutions. The emphasis on reason sometimes conflicted with religious dogma. Monarchist opposition. Absolute monarchies and aristocratic elites resisted Enlightenment calls for democratic governance and limitations on monarchical power. Societal resistance. Enlightenment ideas promoting individual freedoms faced resistance from those who feared the destabilizing effects of increased personal autonomy and the erosion of established hierarchies. The legacy of the Enlightenment. Lasting impact on modern society. Democratic governance. The Enlightenment's emphasis on individual rights, reason, and popular sovereignty has had a lasting impact on the development of democratic governance. Many modern democracies draw inspiration from Enlightenment principles. Human rights. Enlightenment ideals laid the groundwork for the recognition and protection of human rights. Documents like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights reflect Enlightenment values. Scientific progress. The Enlightenment's promotion of empiricism and the scientific method contributed to ongoing scientific advancements and the development of modern science. Secularism. The Enlightenment played a crucial role in the promotion of secularism, separating church and state and fostering a more inclusive and tolerant society. Education and knowledge dissemination. Enlightenment thinkers advocated for the dissemination of knowledge and the importance of education, contributing to the development of modern educational systems. Paving the way for subsequent intellectual movements. Romanticism. While reacting against certain Enlightenment principles, the Romantic movement that followed was shaped by the Enlightenment's emphasis on individual expression, emotion, and the power of nature. Liberalism. Enlightenment ideals influence the development of liberal political and economic theories, emphasizing individual freedoms, free markets, and limited government intervention. Social movements. The pursuit of equality and justice inspired by Enlightenment ideals contributed to subsequent social movements, including movements for women's rights, civil rights, and LGBTQ+ rights. Ongoing challenges and adaptations. The legacy of the Enlightenment is complex and continually evolving. While its ideals have had transformative effects, they have also faced ongoing challenges and adaptations in response to changing social, political, and cultural contexts. In conclusion, the Enlightenment faced contemporary criticisms and opposition, yet its ideals left a profound and lasting impact on modern society. The legacy of the Enlightenment is evident in the principles of democratic governance, human rights, scientific progress, and the ongoing evolution of intellectual movements that continue to shape the contemporary world. Conclusion. In our exploration, we navigated the intellectual landscape of Enlightenment ideals and values, where reason emerged as the guiding light, and the call for individual rights reverberated. The Enlightenment, a response to the societal, political, and cultural conditions of its time, witnessed the rise of influential thinkers like John Locke, Voltaire, and Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Their contributions to political philosophy, freedom of speech, and the social contract fueled the Enlightenment's influence on political systems and revolutionary movements. We scrutinized criticisms, acknowledging the complexities and limitations of Enlightenment ideas, such as Eurocentrism, exclusivity, and utopian aspirations. Enlightenment ideals faced opposition from religious, monarchist, and societal forces. However, these critiques are integral to understanding the multifaceted nature of an era that sought to challenge and redefine established norms. Enduring relevance of Enlightenment principles. As we reflected upon the Enlightenment's legacy, it becomes evident that its principles continue to reverberate through the corridors of time. The ideals of reason, humanism, and democracy, championed by Enlightenment thinkers, have left an indelible mark on the foundations of modern society. The development of democratic governance, the recognition of human rights, and the ongoing pursuit of knowledge all bear the imprints of the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment, though rooted in the past, remains a guiding force propelling us towards a future illuminated by the spirit of inquiry, the respect for individual dignity, and the pursuit of a just society. In every call for freedom, every quest for knowledge, and every step towards a more inclusive and tolerant world, the enduring relevance of Enlightenment principles is palpable. As we stand on the shoulders of Enlightenment giants, let us carry forward the torch of reason, embrace diversity, and champion the rights and liberties that define the legacy of an era that dared to envision a brighter, more enlightened tomorrow. In the symphony of human progress, the Enlightenment's melody continues to resonate, urging us to uphold the ideals that transcend time and empower us to shape a more enlightened and just world.